Hey Cookie friends, Julia Usher here. Welcome to my last live competition Q&A of competition season. I am here today with Judge Sandie Beltran, who I'll introduce in a sec, and we're going to be talking all about the judging process and judging criteria. If you're in the middle of creating an entry or just beginning one or even contemplating one, this video is a must watch because it's going to provide you with some very useful tips for how to structure your entries so that it best appeals to our judges. Before I introduce Sandie and we talk about those criteria, just a couple of words about my competition for those who are less familiar with it. This year it is online, which means it's open to everyone, everywhere in the world. By online, it means you create an entry in the comfort of your own home and upload pictures and a video of it to my cookie art competition databases on Cookie Connection. It's a pretty easy process, and we can answer more questions about that if you've got them as we move forward. Let me just take a look at who's following us online. We started a little bit early and see if there are any comments. Hello to anyone who's watching. Looks like we're okay and live. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. As I said, we're open to anyone, anywhere in the world, and we were also online both in 2021 and 2022. We've hosted the competition in the past also in person. In those years that we were online, a good 35 to over 40% of our registrants were from countries outside of the US, which I think is pretty incredible. So again, we welcome anyone, anywhere, and I think it's important to understand why it is that people do flock to this competition and enjoy it. So I'm just going to touch really quickly on the value of competing in this competition. First of all, the prizes, as you may know, are some of the industry's best. This year we've got a record-breaking number of prizes, more than 25,500, of which 9,200 is cash. The rest of the prizes are digital gift certificates, which means that they can be redeemed by anyone, anywhere in the world. The competition is low risk. No one but you needs to know you entered, and me, because I see all entries. But you're not going to a physical competition. You're not placing your entry on a table for the world to see. So if you haven't competed before, it's a really nice way to get your feet wet. Also, you don't have to transport your entry anywhere. There's a lot of risk in doing that. So we've eliminated that big risk by putting this competition online. And of course, competition is fun. You're going to learn a ton in the process, and most of the learning and growth comes from you trying new things as you complete your entry, but it also comes from feedback that's provided by our wonderful judges. Our judges do an incredible job of evaluating each entry, and if you request feedback, they will also provide you with feedback that's going to help you advance your skills, not just for the next competition, but for your next cookie order or your next cookie project, whatever it is, or however you participate in cookies, you will learn and grow as a consequence of being involved in this competition. So speaking of judges, I'm going to turn to my next slide. Before I do, I want to note that we're, of course, streaming live. My computer's a bit old, so I'm experiencing some lag time between what you might see and what you might hear and what you might see. Sometimes the voices aren't synced with the audio, but have no fear, all of the audio is being captured, so you'll get all of the essence of this discussion. So moving on to the judges, I want to introduce Sandie. As I said, hello, Sandie.
Hi, everyone.
So Sandie, just a few words about her, and then I'm going to let her talk a little bit more to all of you. Sandie has been judging with me since 2019 when we filmed my competition for the Food Network. So she's quite versed in the competition's rules, judging criteria, and so on. She, of course, also judges for a number of other competitions, which she'll tell you about. When I select my judges, I like to select those that have a vast array of judging experience so that they can draw from other competitions they've worked in to help improve ours. I like to involve people that have competed so that they appreciate your point of view as you're creating an entry. And I also like to bring together a diverse set of skills. My judges represent the best of the best in a wide range of skills. Sandie here is our resident painting expert. As you know, her work is incredible. She's also just a general awesome cookie decorator in general. So we're very lucky to have her. I'm going to turn the mic over to her for a bit so that she can better explain her background and how she comes at this competition.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julia. And again, thank you so much for having me today and for having me be part of such an amazing competition all these years. Everyone, my name is Sandie Beltran, and I am from You Can Call Me Sweetie. I have been decorating cookies since 2013, and I have been professionally judging since 2015. So it's about 9 years experience of judging, and I've judged all over the world. And what's great about Julia's competition is that um, it's now global. I absolutely love the fact that it's online and now it's global, and we get to see amazing talent from pretty much everywhere. um, so yeah, I am so glad to be here, and yeah, let's get all these questions and any type of things that you might be nervous about and things that you're not sure about. Let's get all of that squared away and get you guys to get your entries in.
Yes, so I'm going to pause here and see if we have any questions. I don't see any here. If you've got them, guys, fire away. Hi,
Yeah, don't be shy.
nice to see you. Ira's been attending all of our lives, so she's going to be well versed in everything she needs to know to prepare her entry. Any questions, Ira, or anyone else? If not, I can forge ahead to our prepared remarks. As I said, we're going to be reviewing the judging process in great detail, and this time also the judging criteria. So I don't see any questions. I'm going to move forward, Sandie. I'm going to take the first part of this slide, and then Sandie's going to pick up on the second half. I did address elements of the judging process when we last did a live with our judge, Beatrice Mueller from Gingerneers. But we're going to review it again because it's that important. The judging process is nothing that we keep secret. We want everyone to know how it occurs because, again, we're very... one aspect of my competition that I feel is really important that it be as fair and equitable to entrants as possible, that they have a clear understanding of what they must deliver and how it's going to be evaluated. The prizes are pretty significant, so we want to make sure that everybody feels they got a fair shake. So to that end, there are a number of things we do to make the competition as fair as possible. The first one is that the entries, as I alluded to before, are anonymous. When you submit your entry online, we do not allow any identifiers on the entry. That is, your name should not be on photographs, it should not be on the video, your logo should not be as well. You will be entering your name and address so that me, as administrator of the competition, knows who entered. But before any judge sees your entry to evaluate it, I hide those names so that they are judging blind, meaning they don't know whose entry they're judging as they're judging. And again, that makes sure that they don't bring in any pre-existing biases to the judging process. We also do not allow people to post their work in process until the final winners have been announced. Again, our judges are online, so if they happen to see your work in process online, they'll be able to associate you with your entry, and we're trying to avoid that for reasons of equity, objectivity, and so on. Also, we don't just randomly judge. We don't sit back and say, hey, love this one. This entry really resonates with me. You know, it's a very systematic process. We've got discrete judging criteria for each class in the cookie competition. We've got a 2D cookie category, which is essentially flat cookies. We've also got a 3D or constructed cookie category. They each have similar but different judging criteria, and each entry is evaluated across each of those criteria, assigned points. Those points are summed up and then tallied across all of the judges to come to a total score. And it's that total score that then determines the final placement in the competition. Another element that ensures that we have a really balanced and fair judging process is that we do two-step judging. This ensures that all judges' voices are equally heard. Sometimes in group settings, there can be somebody that's a little bit more talkative or outspoken. then the next. And we want to make sure that everybody's valuable expertise, because I did spend a lot of time making sure my judges are, the right complement of people. I want to make sure that all of their voices are heard. So in this two-step judging process, in the first step, each judge evaluates each entry independently of all the other judges. They don't speak. I get all the scores, I tally them, and then we come together in a second session to really fine-tune for second and third place winners. I'm going to stop here, let Sandie pick up the rest of the slide, and then we'll take questions about this process.
Yes. So, feeding off of what Julia said, the first step, we all independently check all of the entries. And then once all that is done, we come together and then we start tallying up all the scores from every single judge. Now, one of the things that I really love about this process is because, and what I love about this team is that every single time that we've done it in the past, we always tend to seem to be in the same ballpark. So when I'm judging and I see right off the bat, I can see based off of the cleanliness of the work and the creativity, things that are innovative, things where I'm looking at it and I'm like, wow, how did they do this? Basically, it's a piece that it stands out, and and I already know pretty much what my first and second, third placing is going to be. What I love about that is that we then all meet up together and see if that is in the same ballpark with all of the judges. And most of the time, we're pretty much on cue. Sometimes we're not. And, we sit down and we discuss it. So we really put a lot of effort and time. This is very important to us. We want to make sure that, you guys have put so many hours and effort into this. We really want to make sure that we judge this fairly and we judge it in a way where we all come together and get a unanimous decision on your scoring. So that would be the second step when we all come together. And then predefined point deductions for rules not followed. This is extremely important, guys. I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to read the rules. It has happened to us a few times where we are just absolutely in love with a piece, and at the end of it, we have to deduct the points because they didn't follow the rules on certain things. And sometimes you're neck and neck with first and second or second to third place, and that second place will go down to third, or even a third place will go down to fourth because they simply didn't follow the rules and they got points deducted off of it. So don't forget to read the rules. All right, so everyone gets scored. Feedback and learning are paramount. So yeah, competing is great. It's not for everyone, but I want everyone to know that one of the main things that you get out of competing is you learn. You are going to learn a lot about so many things in your technique, in the way that you execute things. And I know it's a lot. It can be nerve-wracking to put yourself out there, but believe me, it is so rewarding to finally take that leap and compete and have your work judged and learn on how you can improve, or even something where you thought, because sometimes we are our own worst critic, right? Sometimes you will see that something that you thought you didn't do as well, the judges are going to rave about. So there's just a couple of things for you to think about when submitting your competition piece with us. And feedback. Okay, so then the feedback, you have to submit your feedback request by June 30th, right, Julia? The deadline is June 30th. So make sure that you do that by then.
Yeah, so we spend a lot, as Sandie said, we spend a lot of time not only evaluating, but also writing feedback if people request it. So we don't want to actually write the feedback unless people absolutely want it. So I do require that be requested. Those requests should come to me in writing to my email, sweetlife@juliausher.com. And it's due, as Sandie said, June 30th, 5 p.m. Central Time, which is the same time the entries are due. You can send it to me earlier. I already have a list running of requested feedback, in fact. So the feedback's cool because it will not only include your average scores on each criteria, it will also include the average scores of everybody who entered in your cookie category. So you can see immediately like where you scored high relative to your peers or where you might have underperformed. And that's also supported by a lot of qualitative feedback. As Sandie said, we don't just point out what might need improvement. We also spend a lot of time reinforcing what we think is awesome because we want people to continue, those great practices. But so this section that says the judges especially like this, with specific examples, and you'll see a section where they think you might have room for improvement. Oftentimes they'll supplement those suggestions with ways to achieve it, so you're not left wondering, well, you want me to do this, but how do I do it? So we really go the extra mile with the feedback. I think it really, that alone is just reason enough to enter. Sandie, did you have anything to add?
No, just basically I'm really excited. I'm just so excited to see everyone's entry, and I know that there's a lot of people out there that are kind of still thinking about it. They're not sure if they're going to do it. And again, as Julia had mentioned, this is anonymous. There's nothing for you to have to take with you or lug around or put in the car or figure out how you're going to get it to a point A to point B. This is in the comfort of your own home. And yeah, you ain't got nothing to lose. You have so much to gain. I promise.
I agree. I agree completely. We have one question from Ira, who also has stated that she's pretty nervous about the process, but I hope that all of her attendance at these sessions is mitigating some of that nervousness. But she did ask this feedback: do I ask for ones after I submit my entry? You can ask for the feedback at any time. Just email me, sweetlife@juliausher.com. I will say we process the feedback in the order I receive it. So if you're early on the list, I'm going to be writing up your feedback form and getting it to you sooner than others. The entire feedback, so what I do with the feedback is I take all the judges' scores. The judges also write individual comments, and then I spend a lot of time coalescing all of those remarks into one summary document that I send out digitally. Each of those takes me an hour and a half to 2 hours to do. So I process them, not to mention all the time the judges spend evaluating the entry. So I process them in the order received. Depending on the number we get, it can take me anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks to get through all of that because I'm also working around my full-time job. So last year it took me about 3 to 4 weeks to get them all out. So long story short, email me today if you know you want it, and you'll be near the top of the list. I already do have some people who have requested it, though. So yes, okay. So let's move on to judging criteria. This is something we haven't discussed here in a live. However, these judging criteria are also listed in the rules in the competition overview post on Cookie Connection. So if you miss them here, that rules document, the competition overview post, is the master resource for you. That's the place to go when in doubt. And if that blog post doesn't answer all of your questions, of course, you can email me and I'll answer what I can. I'm going to cover the 2D judging criteria, and then Sandie's going to cover the 3D judging criteria. As I said before, we have a 2D cookie category, which is basically flat cookies. And we have a 3D cookie category, which involves a cookie construction, a minimum of 12 cookies pieced together in a freestanding piece. Now, for 2D cookies, we have 7 judging criteria. Each of these are assigned scores from 0 to 10. So if you get a perfect score, you get a 70. One of the most important criteria in my mind is interpretation of theme. Any entry that comes into this competition must be fresh, meaning it's got to be created uniquely for this competition, and it must tie into our theme, which is Your Eras Tour, a spin on the whole Taylor Swift tour. If you need more of a description of the theme, again, you'll find that in the competition overview post, and we can answer questions about it later. We also evaluate things like number and difficulty of decorating techniques, mastery of techniques, how clean not only is the icing, but also the edges and cuts on your cookies, how original or creative your designs are. To that point, we do not allow copyrighted art of any kind. We are looking for originality. That means not copying Taylor Swift imagery, not copying the Taylor Swift logos, not copying any other art of any kind. We want something derived from your head and that speaks to you and from your perspective personally. While we do reward for number and difficulty of decorating techniques, I will say that's offset by the category overall appeal. We don't want you just slapping together a lot of decorating techniques for the purposes of getting them onto your project. They have to work together, they have to complement each other, and they have to result in a cohesive design, and that's where the overall appeal rating comes in. So as you're creating your entry, I encourage you to look at these criteria, make sure you're addressing all of them in your piece, because this is how we're going to be scoring you, but also periodically step back as you're creating and make sure that you're not going overkill in any one area. And make sure that design is balanced. Make sure that though you're trying new things, that you're not trying too much or you're not trying too little. It's overall balance here that's going to matter. It's rare. In fact, I don't know that I've ever seen it in competition for anyone to get a perfect score. However, because we do score across 7 criteria, typically, some entrant will score really high on one, not so high on another. Another entrant might score higher on that another criteria and less high in another. So the scores end up balancing out and typically being very tight, as Sandie said. There might be a few different, few point difference typically between first, second, and third. So again, bear that in mind.
All of those rules.
Follow those rules. Things we don't allow are inedible components, with the exception of the 3D category. You can use inedible supports as long as they're visible. We don't allow copyrighted material. We don't allow entries that don't meet the minimum cookie requirements. In the case of 3D, it's 12 cookies that go into the construction or more. So, read those rules, because we will deduct points at the end once we score everything. If somebody hasn't followed a rule, typically a set number of points will get deducted, and that can be the difference between placing or not placing. Okay, I'm going to move on to the 3D judging criteria, and Sandie's going to address those. They are similar but differ in some key ways.
So obviously, yes, interpretation of the theme. If anyone has any questions regarding the theme, I know that we had some issues where people didn't really thought that it was just going to be Taylor Swift themed, and it's not. I just want to reiterate that this theme is. I'm actually really excited about this theme because it's giving you the opportunity to let us and the world have a little insight to you and things that are important to you. Maybe a certain time in your life that was very important for you, or some sort of Julia, help me out here. Some other um, time in your life that really, really was important, or something that just brings you some really great memories. Bring those memory back in your piece. So this is what we meant by your era's tour, or even a certain era in history that is important to you. This is going to be a lot of fun to see all the different entries trying to interpret, the interpretation of this theme. It's not about Taylor Swift. I just want to put that out there. It's not about Taylor Swift. So,
if I can just say, so just to reiterate the theme is your era's tour, and it means we want you to create a set or a collection of cookies or an entry following the minimum cookie requirements for each of the categories, 2D versus 3D. But we want that entry to express your important eras or moments in life, to take us on a tour, if you will, of those special moments in your life. You can represent one era through your cookies, or you can represent multiple eras. The choice is yours. You've got lots of flexibility in how you interpret that theme.
I love it. I'm so excited.
I am too. Like it.
I know. I'm so excited. All right. So then number and difficulty of decorating techniques. As Julia had said, be very conscientious on how many different techniques that you do. It is a bonus if you use several, but remember that when using several techniques, you want to make sure that you've mastered those techniques. Um, and many times I've seen pieces where they feel like it's going to be bonus points for them to add as many techniques as they possibly can into a piece. And that is not always the case. Sometimes we see people um, doing so many techniques, but not really executing them in a way that really shows their talent, but yet there'll be two or three techniques where they have it right on point, and then five, six, or seven of them that it's not. So just keep that in mind. Um, Make sure that you really understand the technique that you're using and that you're using it to the best of your abilities, right? Mastering of decorating construction techniques. My forte is not in 3D. I've done some 3D pieces, but Julia has a lot more um, experience with that. But you want to make sure, again, that you use um, your techniques for building and using them correctly, cleanly, and in a way where I think we said that everything needs to be at least organic, organic material, no type of wires or anything like that for your construction. Cleanliness of individual elements and 3D construction. Same thing. That's one of my clenchers. When I am judging, I need to see that the work is clean. We want to make sure that things don't look rushed and that you really took the time to get the piece done in a clean manner. Originality of design, that's the same thing with the 2D, setup and display, overall appeal. And then we also have two new criterias that we've added on this year, which is number
Well, not
and
this year, but for 3D cookies in
for
particular.
3D,
Yeah.
sorry for 3D, number and difficulty of construction techniques, and scale, balance, and visibility of 3D construction on all angles. That is another thing that we've had in the past where it's just such a great 3D piece from the front, and then wah, 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 we go to the back of the piece and it's not fully decorated. So we want to make sure that we're able to see the piece through all angles. So make sure that you plan to decorate all around. Also, making sure your scale and balance is on point. So many times we've seen a well executed 3D piece, but that shoe is way too big for that closet or something. Like you want to make sure that everything is scaled correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so um, you'll obviously try to do that in your piece, but we also asked you to submit certain things that'll allow us to see the 3D viewability. And that is, you'll be required to submit a short video, which you can take on your iPhone, no biggie, but it should show the piece all the way around. And
Correct.
we asked for a number of work in process photos, and specifically some that look at the back of the piece as well as some that look at it from the front. Um,
Hmm.
you will find all the submission requirements in the competition overview post. There are two links at the bottom which will show you exactly what you're going to need to upload. I would encourage you to also look at those submission requirements really carefully before you start constructing and creating, because again, many of them are work in process photos and you want to capture those work in process photos as you go. Once you register for the competition, which means declaring that you're going to enter and paying the reg fee, you will also be given online access to the entry databases, and you can go in and explore them, even practice uploading if you want. And you'll see the same submission requirements listed there, one for one. They match the documents that I discussed earlier, but you'll see exactly where you need to upload each piece. It's pretty
Again, I
straightforward.
want to stress, read the rules. A lot of things that happen with 3D is that materials that are not, um, they are not, I mean, there's some things that are non edible that you can use again if it's organic, but if it is non edible, like wires and stuff like that, make sure that you read the rules and you don't use them. That way we don't have to deduct points on that.
So basically, the rule with supports on 3D is that we prefer if they're completely edible. However, you're
Mhm.
allowed in an edible support if it's visible from the outside without deconstructing the entry. So, for instance, an example of that might be if you had cookie pops sticking up out of your piece and you used a stick to support the cookie pop. That would be okay because theoretically, if someone were to eat the piece, they'd see that stick and be able to remove it before eating. What we don't want hidden inedible supports because in practicality, if someone were going to eat the entry, that could be a hazard. So while we want you to freely create and open up your mind, we want you to do it within the bounds of what is edible, of course, and safely edible. So that's the rule for internal supports on 3D. On 2D cookies, everything has to be edible on the piece. I also wanted to talk a little bit about clean because you used the words clean a few times in discussing. And for 3D, for me, clean means a couple of things. It means that the cookie cuts and shapes are precise, that the edges are not rough, that seams on a 3D piece come together nicely without a profusion of icing sticking out, or
Exactly.
or in some cases the seams can be decorated and actually contribute to the overall entry. So when you're thinking about cleanliness of your piece, think about all those junctures where different elements come together in a 3D piece, and we want them to be neat. Again, no, not a lot of icing sticking out. We don't want to see how you've secured things. We want the piece to look more or less seamless, if you will.
Yes.
That's a big challenge, but and that can't always be done, but that would be the goal, and that's what we mean by being and working clean. Anything else here, Sandie?
Nope, that's good.
Any questions from anybody viewing? We love questions.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I don't see. So we're going to move to the next slide. Sandie's going to take the presentation more or less from here, and she's going to talk a little bit more free form about what she most appreciates in entries and what she least appreciates, kind of her pet peeves. Now, these will all coincide and be consistent with our judging criteria, but I think it's sometimes helpful just to hear more qualitatively how a judge thinks about judging. So I'm going to turn over the presentation to Sandie, who's going to talk first about what sets an entry apart in her mind.
Yes. So when I first step into, and that's whether if I'm stepping into a room or if I am stepping online and looking at all of the different entries, I like to see a piece that stops me in my track. So, when I'm going and I'm looking at each piece, something that stops me in my track is originality. Seeing something that I haven't seen before, being able to see a technique that I can't figure out how they did it. When it's like, wait a minute, how in the world did they do something like this? This is amazing. It's one of the things that I absolutely love about judging is seeing people really think out of the box and just really pushing themselves and really being innovative and pushing techniques even in our cooking industry. That takes me back a little bit to when I first started doing cookies. I always when I was starting a new piece, I always try to think about, well, what if, there are no rules in doing them. When I say rules, I mean as creating. um, there's no rule that says that I can't use fondant for this or maybe use royal icing like that. Or what if I was to use the royal icing this way? Or if I was to add this or that? I really, really enjoy seeing people who enter these competitions really be innovative. Another thing that for me is really important when seeing these entries is the cleanliness. That is always a big clencher for me. I like things well constructed, things that are cohesive. I tend to get a little overwhelmed when there's too much stuff going on. And if you're trying to tell me a story, you're trying to tell me something in your piece, it might get lost a little bit when there's just too much things going at me. Um, Another thing that I absolutely enjoy and what I really look at when I'm judging is, um, as I mentioned earlier, is really taking a very well known technique and just mastering it, doing it in a very clean, well executed way. I know that my main thing is, when you paint on cookies, if you're planning on painting on cookies or painting on royal icing or painting any type of portrait or anything like that in your piece, I always encourage, even with my feedback, that you make sure that whatever medium that you're using to paint, that you are um, well knowledged in it and making sure that there isn't any pitting or any type of warping with your royal icing, that you have nice clean lines. Colors, using lots of colors, I love as well. So yeah, those are a couple of the things that I really look at, and also the story behind it. I remember there was one year, there was an entry and it had to do with a tree and the roots. I don't remember all the details, but how many years later, and I'm still thinking about this piece because of the story, the way that the artist interpreted the theme and brought it to life in cookies is just absolutely entertaining, and I absolutely love it. And it's one of the main reasons why I come back all the time to judge, because of seeing people explore so many different techniques um, in the competition.
Hmm. Just to elaborate on what Sandie said, in looking at her feedback forms, she's our resident painting expert on the team, or one of them. And I, there's not a year that passes where she doesn't remark on the quality of painting on entries. She mentioned one of the things she looks for is a lack of pitting, not an over application of liquid in painting. The other thing that you often point out is blending, like blending smoothly without defined lines, and being really careful about that. That blending contributes a degree of realism that's really lovely to see in entries. So, as our painting expert, I can concur that she does look for those things. And if the other judges haven't pointed out missteps in those areas, she'll definitely point them out to us.
I also have a confession to make. I have an obsession with painting eyeballs. If you haven't noticed, I just love painting eyeballs. Forget about hands or ears or nose, it's just eyeballs. So if you plan to put any eyeballs on anything, I just absolutely get giddy and I get so excited when the artist takes the time to add a little bit of that shadowing in the eyes to give the depth. That's another word I say a lot.
Mhm.
Depth. Oh, I love the depth in here. So yep, that is one of the things that I absolutely love, and look a lot in the entries.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that as well, uh, for me, especially if somebody's painting, or even if they're dusting, adding any kind of shading through, any depth through shading,
Yep.
is being conscious of consistent application of highlights and lowlights. So, almost have in your mind like where your light source is coming in and how that light is
Exactly.
casting itself on the piece, and then shading accordingly. I mean, we could
Yep.
have the same discussion about almost any technique. For instance, if you're going to be
Mhm.
stenciling, for me, if you're airbrushing and stenciling, I'm looking for a speckle-free spray pattern that indicates to me that you know how to operate your airbrush. Easier said than done in some cases. I'm looking for a minimum of underspray, not a lot of overspraying and ugly commingling of colors, but really a distinct pattern in most cases, unless the design dictates a less distinct one. So we could take stenciling, we could take wet on wet, we could take any technique and give you an
Using
indication of
fondant.
what we like and what we don't like. But that's maybe too much detail for today.
To add to that is also, adding fondant pieces to your entry. Sometimes, you can just get fondant flowers and just slap it onto a cookie, but also being able to take those pieces and put them in a way where it just looks like it was naturally there. I mean, again, those are different things like that that we definitely look at.
Hmm. Ira says, "Oh man, I might put an eyeball on my design right now," which is,
Yay! Do
but it has to
it! Do
relate to the
it!
theme.
Do it!
Okay, I'm going to turn to the next slide and talk a little bit about kind of things to avoid in your entry. You may have touched on some of these things already, but it's worth reinforcing. What are your pet peeves?
In the era of Eddie. Dun, dun, dun. I love the Eddie. Don't get me wrong. I help one of my local friends. She has a cookie business, and the Eddie. I'm never gonna talk bad about Eddie. We all love Eddie,
Yeah,
but
incredible
when it
name.
but Eddie, I mean, there's sometimes I want to say Eddie yes, and there's sometimes that's Eddie no. I feel like if you're going to use edible images, or if you're going to use like the Eddie or anything that's printed out, um, again, putting it's not just grabbing the image and slapping it onto a cookie and saying,
Right.
okay, I'm going to use this um, to make it look like that. But it's just making it look seamless, if that even makes sense. Making it look like it belongs there, not just printing um, a person's face because can't um, um, you can't draw it or you can't paint it. If you're going to get an edible image, maybe work putting just the face or just putting aspects of it that are pre-printed, but then also adding layers to it with other techniques is what I'm trying to get at. Not just getting that edible image and just slapping it on, which I've seen it in a lot of entries where it's like, this just doesn't float my boat because it's just slapped onto the cookie. It can be added. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but it should be added in a way where it looks like it's been blended in there, that it looked like it's just a tool, not that it was
Right.
uh, a way of getting it done quicker and faster and easier.
Can I elaborate on that a little bit? Because
Yeah.
I think what you said applies to almost any tool use. If we see an over reliance on a particular, we don't prohibit use of any tool. We all use tools in our cookie decorating. We use pastry bags, we use airbrushes, we use stencils, and some people use Eddie. It's just a
Yeah.
spectrum of tool use. And so we don't prohibit any, but I would say that if we see an over reliance on any one tool, fondant molds is another great example, an over reliance or use of them that's not applied in an interesting or seamless way, as Sandie described, then that's
I love Julia words. Julia has like the best words. Can I just say that again? She just says, I just say whatever blurps out of my mouth. She takes it and she just makes it so beautiful. I love it. Go
well,
girl. Go
I
girl.
kind of fumbled my intro today, so I hope people apologize, but
Me
accept
too.
my apology for
It's
that.
okay.
But anyway, the point is exactly hers. Is like we don't prohibit tool use. We all use a range of tools. A paintbrush is as a tool as much as the Eddie is. It's how you apply it. It's whether you do it in a magical, creative way that's part of the overall design. That's going to
Yep.
be most important to us. And I
Yes.
want to say that because it was just recently, it was just today. I've gotten a number of competition questions today, which is great. It indicates people are working on entries. But one of the
Yep.
questions was related to tool use. Like, can I use molds and stencils? And I said, of course. But I answered, essentially the way I just did here.
Mhm.
Thanks, Julie. Julie just said I use beautiful words too.
Doesn't she? I
I
just
did
love
get
it.
my 8th grade spelling bee. I will have you know, I've been kind of a word girl since the very beginning. So.
I love it.
Okay, so Wendy, let me let you get back to your points here about kind of pitfalls or things to avoid in entries.
Yeah, let me think. Another thing that I would say to try to avoid is oversaturation of colors. Sometimes less is what's that saying? Less is better, whatever you how you
Less
ever
is
say it.
more. Yep.
Less is more. There you go. I sometimes see some really great constructed pieces, but the colors are just way too saturated. Be careful with those reds. You know, when they come out of the bottle, they are they these colors can change. Darker colors, just be
Mhm.
careful with your application. Again, seeing a very well thought out piece but not well executed just breaks my heart. So I would say that's another thing to try to avoid. Um, yeah, and again, like what we talked earlier, it's, you know, making sure if you're going to use just four techniques, but you've mastered those four techniques and you're using them in many different ways, I'd rather see that than see an entry that has, you know, 15 different techniques where only three of them are well executed, and then, you know, all the rest are just, you know, um, uh, not well executed.
Mhm.
And one other thing is, oh, what was the point I was going to say? Oh, I thought about it when I was saying it. When you um, do a piece and you're the execution of, oh God, I just lost my train of thought. I was thinking of it too. I was like, oh, that's going to be the next thing I'm going to say. Sorry, that's my.
It'll come to you when you least expect it.
Yes, it was such a good point too. Uh it was, hold on. So okay, wait, I was talking about the oh, never mind. It'll come back to me.
Julie had a question. Julie Gowan, I can replay, right? And the answer is yes. When we're done here, the recording of it will automatically post to my Facebook page. I also upload the videos to YouTube and embed those videos, the replay video, in a blog post on Cookie Connection. So you can go back, actually, Julie, to Cookie Connection, go to the Julia M. Usher's Cookie Art Competition category of the blog, and you'll see every single post that I've ever posted about the competition. And we have many, many videos that we've done this year, many more than in past years, with different people providing different perspectives on the competition, sponsors, judges, etc. So all valuable stuff. Sandie, you mentioned something about story on the previous slide and how having a story that's personal is really important to you. I want to play up on that here. I think one of the things that I have tended to see most often that leaves the judges kind of quizzical is like, wait, how does this entry relate to the theme? People just kind of forget. I've seen that more often than not. Not more often than not, but if there's a thing that trips people up, it's that they just haven't made a close connection to theme. And again, all the entries need to come in fresh. They need to be related to our theme. If you're not sure that your theme is coming through loud and clear and just looking at the cookie photographs you submit, do remember there's an area on the entry form which allows you to elaborate on how you interpreted the theme. And do make use of that. Make sure you fill that out. Make sure that if there's anything that's ambiguous, it's made clear to the judges. I often read that. I always read that area of the form. And it always provides added insight into the entry. Anything else
Awesome.
here,
It's like
Sandie? No.
we don't want to see like a teapot, you know. Okay, I've always wanted to do a teapot. Okay, so what is the teapot telling us?
Right.
You
Like,
know,
how does that
so
teapot relate to an important era in your life? If it just so happens that, you started a tea business, then, okay, maybe there's a connection. But the connections have to be a little bit stronger than that, in my opinion.
yes, bingo. That's what we're trying to say. I get it. The teapot's important, but it's a teapot. So we need to know how is it connecting with the theme.
Yeah, and also how your expression of that theme is connecting, how all the cookies in your entry relate to the expression of that theme. So, for instance, it's really great when the cookies have a meaning, like their arrangement spatially has a meaning, how their decoration spatially has a meaning, how they're, so think about the story that the collection of cookies tells as well. It's not enough to put a magnificent cookie on a platter and say,
Exactly.
it's the cookies need to tell us the story that relates to the theme, if that makes
Story,
sense.
or even take us on a journey. Like, that's what not expecting, but it doesn't literally need to take us on a journey, but we want to see it, take us somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, back to the 50s, or back to, a time with you personally. I just want to be taken somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I am going to move to our one of our final slides. I think we've talked ourselves out, Sandie and I. So
Yeah, ask some questions, people. Don't be shy. You can ask how the weather is here. I'll tell you.
yeah,
You
I'll tell
you
you, there's a
hear?
lot of background noise here because we're in
Yes.
cicada country right now. There's so much
Do
noise
you hear
outside my.
that, everybody? I hear it. I'm freaked out for Julia. Julia, don't
Yes,
go outside.
yes, I have been staying indoors, and even indoors is really pretty loud and distracting. But anyway, um, okay, we have no questions. I can't believe it. So we must have explained everything so darn thoroughly that
Right.
we're in pretty good shape.
Oh, but you know what we can say too, guys? If you're watching this on a replay, you can ask questions in the comments, right?
Correct. Or email
So
me.
don't
You can.
worry. Exactly. So don't worry if you haven't seen this live. Definitely, if you're watching this with, afterwards, and you've got questions, go ahead and write those questions down, and we'll definitely get back to you and answer all the questions that you might have on
Yeah,
entering.
really, a really good place for entering questions is under that competition overview post on Cookie Connection. If it's like a generic, competition question about rules, that's a good place to put it because if I answer it, then everybody benefits from the answer. If it's more specific to you, like I'm not sure which skill level classification I should put myself in. Then I would
Hmm.
suggest, sending an email to me. I just got another one of those yesterday where someone said, I've been decorating for a while. I teach, what'd she say? She said, I teach a cookie decorating course, but I've only been decorating for a year. I would consider my skills really basic. What do I do? So I'll probably say, in a case like that, ask for some direction to her website or work so I can kind of evaluate it to best plug her into the right category. So
And
personal questions, definitely send them to me if you don't want to put them out there publicly. Public ones,
yeah,
we love general ones going public so everybody can see the answers.
and and speaking to all the beginners out there, um, don't be intimidated by this type of competition. It's one of the things that we've seen in the past are people who are not have not been in the cookie decorating thing for quite some time. And let me tell you, it stems back to when I first started doing cookies. I never ever had painted on anything in my entire life. um, Prior to cookie decorating, and it was the love of cookie decorating that inspired me to start painting on a cookie. And I didn't figure out that I could paint the way that I can paint until I was 38 years old. So I want beginners to really think about that, and don't be hesitant or shy to submit, because you might surprise yourself.
Mhm.
You might submit something that's going to blow us away. And you might discover something in yourself that you didn't know you had. Trust me from experience. And look where that little jump took me 10 years later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. Um, I feel like these competitions are actually almost best suited to beginners because there's an opportunity to get your feet wet, to try new things. And again, it all relates back to the fact that this is a really risk-free format with it being online. So I encourage everybody to go out there and do that. We do also have a beginner intermediate category and an advanced master category. So you're going to be competing with people of like skill levels. You're not going to be up against people who have been decorating for years either. So,
Let me talk to those experienced cookiers too.
okay.
Competing again, is not about winning. I cannot stress that enough. I have been judging for 9 years, and I'm going to keep it real. I'm going to keep it real. It's not always about winning. Winning is an absolute plus, but there is a lot of other things that you can win, within yourself, within your skill set, within your confidence. That doesn't necessarily mean winning the grand prize. So, um, when you enter, always have the mindset that you're here to learn, you're here to grow. And I would say the winning part should be very on the very bottom of your totem pole when it comes to competing, because I have dealt with so many people that their main goal to compete in this type of competition is to win, and that is their ultimate goal. I mean, you shouldn't not want to win, but it shouldn't be the only reason why you're competing, because that can build up disappointment. Disappointment is a natural thing that happens, but sometimes that disappointment gets a little ugly. It gets a little ugly, and we want to make sure that if the results don't turn out the way that you expected, that it only reinforces your drive to try again next year. That is, you know, what I hope in a perfect world. But again, we are really excited to see all the entries. I cannot wait. I'm really excited about this theme. And again, I wanted to take this opportunity to thank Julia for doing this. I think this is something extremely important in the cookie world, and I cannot thank her enough for taking the time, because this is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and the bulk of this work goes to her. She's so meticulous and so organized, and for her to take the time to do this for our cookie community, I just want to thank you, thank you, thank you for doing this for us.
Well, thanks, Sandie. That means so much to me, and I've got to kind of come back with you with a similar kind of love fest. I mean, I want to extend a ton of thank yous to my judges, because there is no competition without them. And I do fundamentally believe everything that you said, that, winning isn't the end game. It's learning and growing along the way that is, and it's our judges who contribute immensely to that process. So thank you so much. I just love having you as part of the team. And
Thank
as
you.
Sandie said, I am so excited to see the entries start pouring in. We have some in already, and they are. It's just lovely to see the various
Oh,
interpretations.
stop! I can't wait.
I know, I know. So that's all I have today. Just a quick reminder that entries are due June 30th, as I said, 5 p.m. Central Time. I would encourage you to register now, though, even before your entry is done. By registering, you go to Eventbrite, my registration platform. You pay a $15 fee, and then you gain access to the entry databases. And milling around in those databases, seeing what they look like before you have to upload your entry, is a smart thing to do. All those links to Eventbrite and anything else you need for the competition, again, are in the competition overview post on Cookie Connection. You'll find a link to it in the caption under this video once this video is recorded and lands on my Facebook page. And that's it. Iris says, thanks for the encouragement. It's been a fun process for me. I can't wait to submit my entry. I can't wait to see it.
Yay. All right, Iris, let's go, girl. You can do it.
Okay, so I'm going to say so long to all of you. And again, just encourage you to reach out with questions if you have any residual ones after the session. And thank you again, Sandie. It's always a delight to have you here online with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Julia. Bye, sweeties.
Bye now.